Okay, so this is part 2 of the upper appendicular skeleton. We're going to get actually into the arm now. So we're out of the shoulder girdle. Although this is our humerus, or our upper arm bone. This does connect, if you guys remember, with the scapula in that glenoid fossa, right? That beautiful ball, right? Ball and socket joint. Okay. So let's go ahead. You guys should be following along. We're here on chapter 12. Arm, humerus, radius, all that. So we're going to jump right into the humerus. Again, go ahead and make sure you grab your term sheet so that you have all the terms. If you need to find that, go ahead and look over there. Boop, on the side here in your course resources. So our humerus, the very first thing we're going to start with, so if you're looking at the humerus, there's two ends, this very rounded end, and then this other weird end. We'll get there. Okay, so going to our anatomical terms, proximal, distal, right? Proximal is going to be closest to the trunk of the body, right? Your thorax. Distal is going to be further away, your elbow is further away. So this rounded ball joint is called the head of the humerus, okay? So that's the head of the humerus. And you guys should see pictures. I'm starting on page 204. Okay, so you have, with the humerus, you have two necks. You have an anatomical neck and a surgical neck. Let's see if there's a good photo of those in your book. Before, yes, if you guys skip ahead to page 210, you see a really nice photo that's going to show you what I'm going to be describing here. So we've got the head of the humerus, just like literally just after that. I'm putting my fingers around it. That is your anatomical neck, right? And that would make sense because here's our head, here's our neck right below it. That's our anatomical neck, okay? I'll take my fingers off, but it's this area right here, okay? It's our anatomical neck. But for this bone, we also have what's called the surgical neck, and it comes below all of this business at the top, okay? So here, I'm going to put my fingers, what's the better way? This way, okay? That's our surgical neck, and you can see that's actually where it starts to get more slender, okay? Our surgical neck. So we have our anatomical neck, and we have our surgical neck, which is this area that starts to get slender after all of the business up at the top. Okay, I'm going to scooch back to page 204 to talk about our tubercles. So we have a greater and lesser tubercle, okay? So if we're looking at this, we can see, so here's the head, okay? So we're not looking at the head, we're looking behind the head, more lateral, okay, because this is, the head's going to be attaching into the body, right? So if we go behind it, there's two big bumps, this one and this one. One is bigger than the other. So the bigger of the two bumps is your greater tubercle, okay? You have a greater tubercle, and then you have a lesser tubercle. So I'm going to tilt. Okay, so this is our greater, this is our lesser. And that makes sense, right? Because those, one's bigger, one's smaller. Bicipital groove. So between those two, okay, and you can see this in your book, they're calling it, they've got bicipital groove in parentheses, but for our purposes, that's what I'm going to call it, bicipital groove. You'll notice in your book sometimes you have two versions of a name for a landmark. Make sure you're going off of the one that we have on the term sheet. Boop. Okay. Bicipital groove. Okay, there's a groove between those two tubercles. Getting very tongue-tied. Bicipital groove. So bicipital, what could that be for? Can we think of something on our arm that starts with biceps, right? Our biceps. So our bicipital groove is an area right, where we have attachments, okay? So your biceps, it's called bi because it splits into two heads, okay? It inserts in two spots. So part of your biceps inserts or attaches here and part of it attaches here. So you have a groove between those two attachments because we know that the tubercles are areas of muscle attachment, right? And then so we would have a groove between those, okay? So that might be telling. Again, if you've got a case where you're looking for a missing person and you find remains and that person was a bodybuilder, they would have really big tubercles, right? Because they would, in theory, have really big biceps. If you're looking for somebody who's got very poor muscle definition, those might not be very large. Deltoid tuberosity. Let me see if she's listed in your book. Yes. Sorry, we're bouncing back and forth a little bit, but page 210 in your book, you have a beautiful picture of your deltoid tuberosity. So if we're looking, here is the head, right? And we go down the shaft. Okay, so this is the, I'm going to give you guys another term. This whole area here is the shaft, right? The area between the two ends is the shaft of the bone. There's a sort of raised, you can see it here, bumpy area, okay? It's not as like pronounced or like poking out as these big tubercles, but it's really like a raised sort of roughened area on the upper half of the shaft. That is your deltoid tuberosity. So this muscle right here is your delt. So it's kind of like a little triangle, and it inserts, or the one end of it attaches here to your humerus, and that helps you do this, right? Helps you lift that arm up and down. Okay, so that's a point of muscle attachment. So again, looking at overall characteristics of the bones. I know that some of you guys started reading the Baden book, Beyond the Body Farm. They're able to talk about muscle tone in chapter 1 and who's holding the golden bowl. Who's holding the golden bowl? So these are things that like you might have like seen in that chapter. Areas of muscle attachment. So if you've got bigger muscles, they're going to be more pronounced and more obvious because you're going to need like a more robust area to hold those big muscles. Okay, we talked about the shaft. Okay, that's on your term sheet. So if we look at the distal part of the bone, okay, so let's go back 205. Okay, so the distal part of the bone, we have a bunch of terms down there. Okay, it does give you. Okay. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is where your elbow attaches. So this is your elbow joint. Okay. So you can see how it rolls around. Okay. And then in the back, it's got this neat little whoop where it tucks in, okay? So if you were to flex your elbow all the way straight, this tucks in, okay? So let's look at that elbow joint. So we have lateral and medial epicondyles. I'm just looking in your book, and they're calling them. Are they calling them something a little bit different? No, okay, 207. Sorry. So 207 is actually showing you from this angle, okay? But what you guys need to know, the biggest thing is that you've got epicondyles on either side, okay? So you've got a medial and a lateral epicondyle. So the medial is going to be the bigger one. Okay, so you see this big epicondyle, that's going to be medial, which means this is actually a right, if I was to cite it, okay? Because this is going to be closer to the midline. so closer to the midline, okay? So you guys can feel that on your own elbow. It's right there, okay? And then you have a lateral, which is going to be smaller, okay? So the smaller of the two is going to be a lateral, okay? So you've got the medial closer to the midline and the lateral. Your olecranon fossa. Olecranon fossa is that area in the back. Remember when I showed you how the elbow attached? That fossa in the back, okay? So in standard anatomical position, this would be posterior, okay? So it's where that tucks into. That's your olecranon fossa. Okay, so that's posterior. Capitulum and trochlea. Okay. So, back to 205. So your capitulum. Okay. Oh, sorry. Your capitulum is going to be this, which is closer to this medial epicondyle. Okay. This is your capitulum. And then this is your trochlea. So your trochlea, to me, looks sort of like, so I've got it in between my two fingers. To me, it looks like a spool of thread, right? If you were to take all of the thread off of a spool, right? And then you were left with this, okay? So this is your trochlea, okay? And then, whoa! Sorry. And then this is your capitulum. So trochlea, capitulum. And I might have misspoke. Capitulum is lateral epicondyle. Trochlea is closer to your medial. So if I said something else, I'm sorry, I can't remember now. Anyways, so capitulum is the more rounded one, right, on the lateral side. And then the capitulum, oh my goodness, sorry, trochlea is the spool one, which is more medial. And your capitulum is the more rounded, which is more lateral. Trochlea, medial, capitulum, lateral. Okay. And then, oh, we have one more. We have a core. You guys are going to kill me. So we have a coronoid process. We have a coracoid process. We have a coronoid fossa. I don't ask me why they did that to you guys. But this is on the anterior side. There's a fossa right here, okay? So again, because those terms are so so close to each other, I would definitely make special notes of them. So we have our coronoid process on our jaw. We have our coracoid process on our scapula. And then we have our coronoid fossa here on our humerus. All right. So, head, anatomical neck, greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, bicipital groove, surgical neck, deltoid tuberosity, shaft, lateral epicondyle, medial epicondyle, olecranon fossa, capitulum, trochlea, coronoid fossa, proximal, distal. Okay. I'm actually going to take a break there. So we're going to do the lower arms in the next section.